Hey everyone, welcome to a video I am very excited to make, which is a review of the new rollback release of Slippi that just came out a few days ago. So you can now play Super Smash Bros. Online with rollback netcode. It is absolutely amazing. And so for those who don't really know me, or maybe this is my first video of yours, I'm Mark MSX. I make mostly shmup content, but in addition to that, I am also a long-time Melee player and Wi-Fi warrior. Have been playing Melee on Anther's Ladder for 5 years now. Almost up to 2K matches in Anther's Ladder's got lots of time in on this game. Melee is my favorite fighting game. I play it all the time. I don't know how many thousands of hours into the game, but many. And so in this video, I not only want to just talk about the new release of Slippi and how amazing it is and what changes it makes that I think are really good, but also talk about what I think this means for the future of playing Melee online and all that good stuff. So to begin with, let me just talk about the experience of playing Melee online prior to a few days ago, prior to this new rollback Slippi release. Because I think this release does a lot of things in addition to rollback to really improve this experience. And so Melee before then was on a delay-based netcode, and as far as delay-based online goes, I do have to say I think Melee's online at that time was still pretty solid. I never felt like it was bad or anything like that. But it was definitely a feeling of you are playing this game online, if you know what I mean. There is that extra lag, there was that kind of period you needed to go through of being used to the extra latency, being kind of mindful of your inputs more, and certain matchups, like this one I'm showing here, I think online added a real frustrating element to them. Like my favorite or least favorite matchup was the Wi-Fi Ganondorf, right? Where Ganondorf at about 180-90 ping, just doing forward airs and jabs, and when you try to punish, you either get jabbed or forward aired. So I thought this would be a great match to show. First off, this guy is around 80 to 100 ping. He's like the archetype of the Wi-Fi Ganon, right? He's got kind of high ping. Not only is it kind of high, pretty high actually for the old days, right? About 80. 100 is basically unplayable. 80 is borderline, like that's the furthest I would go. So I don't know if I'd actually even play this guy on the regular build these days. I'm just kind of done with that. You know, I got sick of it. But yeah, not only that, but his connection is pretty unstable, so he is probably on actual Wi-Fi rather than plugged in via the Ethernet. And just for some information on my own online experience, I have really fast internet, gigabit internet, and I'm also pretty close to the West Coast. I'm in that a region as far as Wi-Fi goes. I get lots of really good West Coast matches. I get lots of really good matches against like Washington and Southern Canada, is that the term for it? Like Canada near the border and all that stuff. So I do have a pretty huge selection of players, especially on the West Coast in California primarily, that I got to play with very regularly. But even still, I didn't have nearly as many opponents as this new rollback is going to allow. And the reason for that is kind of the way it worked before then for people who didn't play a lot of online Melee, is that you were basically region locked to your region as far as getting decent matches. I had a few people kind of in the Midwest and New York that I tried to play against, even with good internet, and it just was a pretty unpleasant experience, borderline unplayable. Like I said, the kind of topping out point was about 80 ping, and that was being real tolerant. Most matches you were aiming for 40 to 30 ping at least. I know there were people who just refused to play above 50 ping and stuff like that, which makes sense, especially if you're on the West Coast and there's a fair amount of players to play against. But at times, you know, you have to admit, Anther's Ladder over the past few years has become less active, where like 2016 matches all day, every day, even at insane hours like at 3 or 4 a.m. You know, you could still get some matches on there now. The crazy part is, a lot of the time when I play Anther's Ladders online, it's around the same, it's kind of the same-ish group of people, where for my skill level, I'm around the I'm around the platinum ranking, a little bit under that, I would say. I've gotten platinum a few times, but it was a pretty short-lived experience as far as my platinum rank. So I'd say basically like platinum 3 would be a good ranking for me, at least back then. It's been a while since I've done it. I think I probably could get higher these days, but nowadays when I play Anther, I just play unranked endless. Like I just go unranked endless every single time, And I play basically everyone as long as they're not too low ranked, just because the low ranked people, I just destroy them a little too much and it's not really that fun for either of us. So one thing about, I'll talk about the matchmaking experience, but overall Anthers Ladder for me over the past few years, to no fault of its own, I think it's just more of a fact of how Melee's gotten a little bit less popular as of late, at least online. It's been a little bit harder to find matches and stuff like that, but I'm having but now with this rollback netcode improvement, even if the player base net does not change at all, which I think it will expand with this, but even if it doesn't, I can now play people from neighboring regions, right? I could play people in the Midwest, I could play people in New York, I could play people in Texas and Mexico, and all these regions that are like kind of on the cusp of what was playable before are now perfectly playable. And what's crazy as far as the way the game feels is that this definitely feels very, very close to offline. It's hard to distinguish the two. If you have a really good connection, it really does feel like you're playing offline, like if you're playing around a 30 or 40 ping. But what's crazy is even around the higher pings, even around the 80s, 70s, 90s, it still feels a little bit laggy, but not really that bad. It kind of feels like older, like 30 ping basically. So it's a huge improvement. I can't emphasize enough. You just need to upgrade and use this from now on. There's no question about it. And what's really cool is not only did it integrate the rollback, which is incredible, but also this build includes a sort of in-game matchmaking system that I understand is going to be expanded upon. And what's funny is, before I used this in-game matchmaking system, I sort of underestimated how complicated the old way of doing it on Anthers Ladder was, where you had to find someone in the match chat, then you had to say hi and, you know, exchange a few pleasantries. If you didn't, you could just get right to the code, but most people kind of exchange a few like hi, okay, enter the code, and then end the game with a GG or something like that, which I don't necessarily mind, but it's all time, right? That's all time. And so then you got to get into the match with the friend codes. Sometimes people struggle with friend codes, and then there's this kind of social dynamic that emerges where if someone is struggling to figure out how to run netplay, you don't want to be a total asshole and just like leave if they're needing help. But when you do this for thousands of matches and hundreds of matches, you start to get a little bit like impatient with people for that, because it's like, okay, I've been doing this for 5 years now, I don't have the patience to help people with their online stuff anymore. Where this, again, with this, that's no longer an issue, right? If someone is having issues connecting, you'll never connect with them, you'll never have to worry about it, right? And they'll have to figure it out on their end. Whereas in the Anthers Ladder, like, you can end up doing tech support for other people just because of the way the matchmaking system works and stuff. And there's always this sort of, like sometimes you'll get matched up with someone and they end up being a troll, but it's like, okay, you went through all the effort of connecting with them and they actually have a pretty decent connection with you. So it's like, okay, I'll play against this troll guy for like 20 minutes or so just because there's not a lot of other people and he has a good ping with me, and the choices are limited basically. Whereas with this, if someone's being an annoying troll, which I did get in one of these matches, you can beat on them a little bit and then exit out, no problem. Move on to your next match. I think there are some like minor negative consequences to the new system, but overall a much net positive. I think the overall minor consequences that I've noticed, and I've played this for like 12 hours now, the build, just going from match to match over the past few days, is that one trend I've noticed is people will quit out of matches way faster now. Like before, again, if you got a good ping with each other and your matches were relatively close, you might sit in that match for up to an hour. Like that's what I would do sometimes, just to get some good games in. And I did have a few matches like that on this build, but from this build I kind of noticed that a lot of people, once you beat them 2 or 3 matches pretty steadily, they just leave, right? Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a change that I've noticed. People tend to stick in matches less long or whatever for less amount of time than they used to. I think that's a double-edged sword in some cases, where there was one guy where we're having very close matches and stuff like that, and I barely beat him, then he quit out, and I was kind of like, why? Like, there was still a lot more melee to be played here, dude. But whatever. Another minor issue that I noticed, there it is right there, is that players seem to be a little bit more grimy on this than in Anther's Ladder, and the reason for it, which can be totally fixed, is on Anther's Ladder there is a reporting system. So if dudes pausing to mess up my chain grab like this guy did here, which is real grimy, you can report them, right, on Anther's Ladder, and that's kind of a big deal actually. You don't want to get reported too much because you can get banned and that's like the end of you, right? Then you have to make alts accounts and stuff like that. Another issue on Anther's Ladder, while I'm on the subject, was smurfing. Oh my gosh, Anther's Ladder has become like the smurfdom. And I actually know why it happens. It's not just people being total dicks. The reason why Anther's Ladder has gotten so smurfy is because the way the matchmaking system works, you can kind of pre-screen your opponents. And so if your rank is too high, you have a real hard time finding matches because people don't want to play you anymore. Like as soon as you hit platinum, your potential people who want to play you is like chopped in half, or maybe even more. So basically, once you get to platinum, like you can really only play other platinum players, and some other platinum players don't even want to play you. They just want to farm lower ranks. So it's a little bit punishing actually once you get into those higher ranks as far as finding matches and stuff, because people don't want to lose to you. And the thing is that I'm actually a box main for like 4 years, and I've just recently, over the past year and a half, switched over to playing Marth primarily. And so I had this whole period of time where my rank was super high, you know, up in the high golds or platinums. But I was trying to improve my secondary Marth, but I was having a real hard time finding matches because people wouldn't play my secondary Marth because they were just screening me out based on my rank. And so I really hope, you know, a lot of these issues are going to be changed, because with this, for instance, there's no pre-screening your opponents. You just get in there and play them, and then you find out and get whopped and quit, or you find a good match and keep playing. I actually like this system a lot more than like pre-screening your opponents. And I think the rank system will be the place where you can pre-screen people. And unranked is like, you know, the Wild West, where you don't know quite what you're going to get, which I enjoy. Other things that I thought were major improvements for this build were, like I said, the matchmaking, even the unranked endless. Since it is within the game, that is a huge time saver and cuts out a lot of, like I said, a lot of the social BS that goes on with Anther's Ladder and stuff like that. Another thing that I'm looking forward to them adding is, of course, the stage select and stuff like that, which to me actually is not that big of a deal that it's not an unranked, because whenever I play an unranked endless, which again is 90% of the time I spend playing melee is unranked endless, because I got bored of the rank system. Then you kind of get soft punished by getting too high of a rank because people don't want to play you anymore. But so when I play endless though, I play like random stages usually. Most people do that. So this being like on a random isn't a big deal. It is a bummer that Stadium is not available. It took me about 3 hours of playing before I thought, like, why haven't we gotten Stadium yet? And I think the reason for it, they were told Stadium's not available. I wasn't exactly informed why, but I'm assuming it has to do with actually like technical limitations of it changing stages and shit, like it changing transformations. That maybe that's causing some kind of desyncing problems or something. Another kind of interesting thing that's missing is that the music, you can't have in-game music in this version. Again, I think this is a technical limitation, because the way music works in Melee is it's not like a ROM, it's not like Third Strike or something where it's like built into the game like directly, right? In Melee, they're actually like separate audio files. So I actually made a mod of Melee back in the day called Chrono Melee, where I went in and I replaced all the music with Chrono Trigger music. And so I think that's probably the issue. It's just the way the music works within Melee is not being kosher with the rollback. That's my guess. But anyway, so my thoughts on this improvement is I think it's going to make Melee much more accessible by not only greatly increasing the player pool, which is a huge deal, but also making the matchmaking a lot more straightforward, a lot less complicated. We don't have to become tech supports, right? And don't have to kind of learn how to do the matchmaking, which can be a pretty big barrier for a lot of people. It's just within the game, everything's getting streamlined, and then they're going to build in rank into this. This is a huge deal. Just with the connection qualities too, it is unreal how even on really low pings on Anther's Ladder, the older builds, like 30, 40 ping, stuff like that, like even low pings, there's definitely still that added delay that feels very like online. But with this, when you're in that 2-frame 30 to 40 ping window, it feels absolutely like you're playing offline. It's very hard to distinguish the two. Another really cool thing is whenever the game is getting all funky, which I had some matches where it got a little bit funky because the ping was kind of, you know, up there, you're still not dropping inputs and stuff. That's a big deal because, especially playing Fox a lot online a few years ago, like ledge dashing and there's a lag spike, you die, right? And those aren't all that uncommon. So you could just, like, ledge dashing was a lot scarier online because your input could just get devoured up. Or you'd like go to do a running shield or a running shine and your shield just doesn't come out because the input gets eaten and you get a forward air to the face or a knee to the face. That happens all the time. So in this, I really like where, yes, it can roll back in some kind of silly ways at times if it's a really, really bad connection. It's still much preferable over the delay just eating your input stuff where you just die randomly, fall to your death randomly. So yeah, definitely I think this is going to make Melee much more accessible, and if you're thinking of picking up Melee for the first time, do it, because Melee, as complicated as a game as it is and as technical as it is, it's also pretty accessible these days because we have all the training packs like 20XX and Uncle Punch, and then we have an amazing amount of like resources as far as learning the characters, learning all this stuff. Melee has spoiled me a little bit, where I went to learn Dizzy and Guilty Gear, and I am learning Dizzy and Guilty Gear and playing her quite a bit, but you know, I'm used to Melee where there's all this sort of character matchup knowledge and information, tutorial videos, and in Guilty Gear I'm trying to learn Dizzy and there's like barely any resources, right, other than manually watching the best players and sort of learning from what they do and a few like setup guides and stuff, but nothing as in-depth as Melee is. And Melee's matchups are also much more focused than a lot of other fighting games, so it's, I think once you get over the technical hurdle of learning how to control your character and learning all the inputs and stuff like that, there's a lot to learn that's pretty accessible. So definitely check it out. It's my favorite fighting game. It's a fighting game that keeps on giving, right? It's been around. It's not going to get bullshit patches. It's just going to keep getting more and more competition and better, I think. So thanks for tuning in, and let me end this by thanking my patrons. So thank you to Dingo, Anthony A, Ben Wynn, Brian Shiver, Dunpill 2064, EC2151, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Gus, Kiwi, Joe Angelo, John, Gameboy Guru, Kay, Quentin, Malaise, Mark Sloan, Martin, Maz, Mayhair Calendrian, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Neon Daggers, Okla Kugels, Parlar, Resosis, Sir Thumb, Sent Marap, Smacky Factor, Sugumo, Turopan, Young Money Sui, Plasmo, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.